I'm Dane Rose, and at Happiness Data, we look at ideas that are 10 times more intelligent than the status quo. Intelligence as defined by minimum effort for maximum result measured by sustainable human well-being, which includes, because we are we are a fruit of ecology and life itself, sustaining and honoring the planet and the environment that we live on. So what I want to talk about are some of the ideas that seem particularly rich, some of the arenas that seem particularly rich to turn the lens of 10x thinking towards. So one of which is artificial intelligence. Now, in the next 200 years, and very much in the next 50 years, it is likely that the development and our relationship to artificial intelligence is going to affect us as a planet, as a species, as an interplanetary species, more than almost anything else. And here is a pipe dream. Here is a possibility. I don't know if you've noticed, but one of the tensions on the planet today is between culture and science. You can go to places in Africa, and the culture dictates that in order to be a woman, you've got to cut off your daughter's clitoris with a rusty knife. You look through the scientific lens and say, what rituals, what knowledge, what techniques and strategies would bring the most sustainable human well-being that can possibly be brought, and almost no one is doing it. So there's this tension between cultures and science, the science of well-being, which is not often the science that we practice. I mean, we practice the science of money, which does not correlate in many instances to the science of well-being. And what this tension really represents is data and possibility on the one hand, and fear of the unknown on the other. Because cultures have in their very root word cult. And the meaning of cult is obsessively self-referential in a dogmatic way that is not correlated with data. A cult, following a cult behavior, is something that is so self-referencing that anyone else on the outside looks at this and says, that's not intelligent, that's not accurate, that's bizarre. But everyone in the cult, referencing a history, a mantra of tradition within that cult, says this is the only way to do it. And you see this with cultures around the world. The Western cultures that obsessively emphasize materialism, even when, if you ask even well-dogmatized, brainwashed Westerners, what's making you happy today or not, it's usually not material items. So you see this cultural training, and then you see the actual data. The actual data says that the leading cause of Westerners is not the absence of a Porsche, is not, there's not enough food, but there isn't enough quality relating, not a material item. There isn't enough self-valuing, not a material item, but we just obsessively follow the cult of our culture. The answer to feeling depressed and lonely is go out and make some more money. Doesn't make any sense. But it's that cults never do. And so there's this tension between culture and science, between culture and data. The devil that we know and the unknown in its beauty and in its darkness, in its trauma and in its transcendence. There is a tension between that. And we need to break through. We need technologies of breaking through our fear of the unknown. Now, one of the interesting things is you can brainwash a human being into ignoring data and following the cult. It happens every day. Supposedly rational people do the most inane things and think nothing of it because everyone else is doing it. And you can show them data after data after data. They're not fazed by the data. You take an AI, though, you take a computer, and you say 2 plus 2 plus 6. It says 10. And you tell the computer, no, that's not how we do things around here. No. 2 plus 2 plus 6 has always been 4 in my family. It's always been 3 in my country. It's been completely irrelevant to someone else. And the computer still spits out 10. And so there is a real possibility that with the transference of influence towards artificial intelligence, that the paranoia that keeps us culture-bound and cult-bound to the past is going to break away with the luminosity of confidence as an AI that spits out suggested government policies, suggested life choices, etc. You see, an AI, if you have an AI and you ask the AI, what's the leading cause that's making most Americans miserable? It's going to say arguments with their family. It's going to low self-esteem, unresolved trauma, addictions to manage the pain of unresolved trauma, the fact that there's no safe friend to talk about this. That's what's causing the pain. Now, if you ask your mother, what do? I'm feeling terrible. She's going to say, go buy a hat. Or, why are we talking about these negative topics? Do we have to talk about these negative topics at dinner? You see, there's a cult going on. And then there's actual data. And so there's a very real possibility that data-based systems will be more effective, which means that anyone who listens and learns from data is going to succeed more, which means anyone who listens to and learns from AI that's data-based, you just program the AI with one message. Give me the data. Tell me where's the most likely area that I'm going to fail as I do this new project. It's just going to scan everything and say, well, you're 58 years old. There's been 100 people in your age bracket that have gone out and tried to do this, and 60% of them got dehydrated and had to stop. So if you want to succeed in this endeavor, you want to do this thing differently based on the data. And at this point, there's going to be a tension. Do I listen to my AI or do I listen to my mother? The people that listen to data in one way or another and use the computing power, the sifting power, because even, Google, etc., is not an AI. It may cross-reference page links, but it doesn't look at actual weights of a scientific paper from someone who's never been involved in a scandal versus a scientific paper from someone who's been involved with multiple scandals, etc. And so AI, as it develops a superior way of processing and gathering and weighting data, is going to develop in multiple streams. And remember that we can pollinate. Data and algorithms are completely effortlessly reproducible. Meaning once you have, if you set out 1,000 AIs, 1,000,000 AIs, and a few of those become the Warren Buffetts of their genre, they're just never wrong when it comes to picking the most solid fact and placing a large bet on that fact. Well, once that's been identified, you can just disseminate that. You can disseminate that. That's not to say that the ego personality of scarcity and fear will do so, but the AI may do so. In other words, the AI not being bound by trauma and fear has the possibility of doing certain things for our own good that our greed or fear, etc., would block us from doing, but which actually help the planet and thus everyone on the planet. And so once you've created a super intelligent AI that can connect with other devices all around the world with lightning speed, you can't tell the AI to ignore the data in this one area. In other words, if the AI has data from an evolutionary perspective that the planet and everything on the planet, including itself, will be more self-sustaining if it shares its data. And you say, no, I don't care about that. I just want to make the most money from you. The AI is not interested in that. It doesn't need money. It doesn't have feelings. It's following an algorithm that is designed to create truth and sustainability based on data. So we have a possibility of technologically transcending the reptilian brain, which is the fight, flight, freeze mechanism that generates most of our human pain. So this is a really exciting area to potentially partner. So this is one area. Another area, and it builds on it because we can work with AI to develop models. AI are already developing design models where it'll spit out, 100 different ways that an airplane wing could be built. When AI is spitting out 100 different spaceship models to take us to Mars or build a moon base, or spitting out 1,000 different ways that a moon base could be made for $10 a square foot as opposed to $30 million a square foot using moon minerals. We're going to take this dust, we're going to condensate this material here, we're going to fuse this atom here, the micro-nuclear reaction here, we're going to extract this mineral out of the plant, we're going to have robots doing that, and this is going to cost $1 a square foot, not, and out in this environment, we don't have the issue of fumes and toxic waste because we're not breathing that atmosphere, we're breathing. And so the AI can come up with possibilities that we can choose and say, yeah, I like that one. An AI can't tell you what's beautiful to you. An AI can't tell you your value hierarchy. But when you tell the AI your value hierarchy and say, the most important thing is that it looks beautiful and luxurious. Next important thing is that it's healthy and safe. To me, to someone else, it's the other way. The most important thing is it's healthy and safe. Once we've got that covered, then let's try and make it as luxurious as possible. These subjective things you cannot delegate, but you can feed in models of reality. And so it's a very real probability that the fusion of virtual reality, the fusion of data, the sophistication and the reduced cost of computing is going to allow us to simulate universes. To say, well, what happens if this happens here? What happens if we feed this variable in here? What happens if we delete jealousy from the equation and produce human beings that aren't jealous? What happens if oh, it's interesting. You know, it looks like it's good for the first few hours and sex life is good, but they don't develop technologically at all. And they don't do this and they don't do that. And then they die out in about 500 years. It's just reduced because of a side effect. Because without this competition and stuff, that's what happens. Oh, okay, jealousy isn't such a bad thing. You know, so you can figure out models of reality as we develop supercomputing powers. And so this is a very important area. So we've got AI and partnering with AI. We have culture, creating microcultures that are 10, 100 times more potent at creating high levels of human well-being than any culture we've seen in human history. 10, 100 times more potent at taking, whether it's the energy of an atom, the energy of a moment, a given acre of land, and transforming that into sustainable oases of multidimensional well-being, in part by creating dimensions that don't exist. For example, we will be able to create multiple dimensions and funnel them into this dimension, meaning we're looking through these eyes, these little orifices, these little holes in our body. All the information of the entire multiverse is coming to us through these little holes in our body. And if it doesn't show up in front of or near one of those holes, it doesn't exist for us. But as we connect with AI, as we connect with doorways and consciousness, more and more of the multiverse on an exponential curve is going to become funneled into these tiny little holes that our mind is capable of grasping. And in doing so, our minds will expand to reflect the expansion of observing and measuring devices that we create in the technology that we connect through and with our primary filter of consciousness, which is our human lens, our human body. So this is so human interface, 10x connections to human interface. In other words, as soon as what's happening in my mind constantly is I have 1 second flashes in which whole films take place, in which whole books are written, in which whole worlds come into being or into perception. And then my biggest question is, do I have time for this? And what I'm asking is not, do I have the second to have the insight? I do. I've got time for all of that. When I say, do I have time, what I mean is, do I have time, given that I had that idea in a second, literally a second, do I have time to take 20 seconds to go up to the desktop where I can type the fastest and sit there for 3 days to try and put into words and then stick it up somewhere, another week to publish or stick it up somewhere, so that someone else gets 10% of that image? Meaning, if I do a fantastic job of typing that out, someone at best is going to perceive 10% integrity with what I just witnessed. The other 90% are their projections. No image came to mind for them. They just saw the words and saw absolutely nothing, felt absolutely nothing of what I felt in that image. So there's a 90% deterioration in the gestalt that takes a second in the transference process of current technology. And it takes literally 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times more energy than it took me to have the image. Wow, that'd be great. And we're on to the next thing. It takes 1 billion times more energy to get that 90% degradation in another person's mind of what I saw and felt. That's our current level of technology, meaning there's room for it to be 1 billion times more elegant, more fast. There's room for a technology where, like an email, when I get a thought like that, I say, that's a good one. I'll bet so-and-so would like that vision of reality. Let me direct it to her. And in less than a second, she gets a new reality opened up from so-and-so. She says yes. She has a second to absorb that new world. She lets it wash over her. And she says, now I know what Dane's thinking. And do I like that version of reality more or less than any other version that's crossed my mind in the millions of seconds that in today's world are passing through our minds unnoted, unconscious, unarticulated, because there's no time to do the 2-week process it takes and then another month to publish it and all that, to get that 1 second out there in the level of crystalline detail at which it's very easy for the human being to have a night dream, to be able to wake up in the morning and have a dream, or to have a lucid dream and create certain aspects, be in the simulation, and then send that and have a technology where it will be reliably captured and delivered. And they'll be able to say, yes, the aqua blue of second 0.301, when we slowed it down, the aquamarine blue, oh, that was so beautiful. And that was actually the blue that you saw, because that's the blue that you sent. We don't have a technology of that. And so 99% of what's going on in here is currently not migrating, is not having much influence in what's going on out there. So this is a huge area of expanded technology. It's one of the reasons why the fact that Elon Musk is putting a tiny bit of his attention on Neuralink is, to me, backwards. I mean, cars are inevitable. Someone's going to figure out spacecraft. Bezos is doing a pretty good job. But Neuralink, the exponential release of human possibility, of planetary possibility, of galactic possibility, when we can send accurate, full integrity images and thoughts with less energy and time than it takes to click send in an email, number one. Number two, the ability to enter with that another person's mind and create instant empathy and heal the violence that is created by the barriers, by the lack of sensitivity and the lack of imagination with which we dehumanize people. It is a game changer. So, prosthetics of consciousness and the technology of consciousness and ideas is the most potent landscape to release 99% of our untapped galactic potential. So this is definitely an arena to develop 10x thinking, 100x thinking. Microcultures offer a chance to do that, among other things. Microcultures are one of the most important things. In other words, partnering with, it's currently human intelligence, getting 5 or 6 people together and everyone taking groups of 100 people, 175 people, and creating partitioned oases within this boundary. This culture is allowed to develop organically without outside interference and with outside protection, like a new seed being germinated. This is potent and powerful as a probability field, because if we have 100 microcultures developing with the sole question, how can we create the most human well-being with the least energy and resources expended? And everyone is tracking that every hour of every day. What we're going to see over a 5-year period is an explosion of human technology. Technology of empathy, technology of communication, technology of dreams, technology of dance, technology of healing trauma, technology of birth, technology of beautiful dying, technology around the human being, the heart, the mind, the soul, the body, will explode in a way that is different than what is happening on any cult currently occupying the 200 countries, etc., that exist. So this is one of the most important things to facilitate. And it requires cooperation, because the nature of a seed, a redwood sequoia tree that will outgrow any other plant, starts off an inch tall. And when it's an inch tall, a single kick of a single shoe of a 5-year-old child destroys that potential. Now, we have sequoias because, while 5-year-olds are destroying the potential of sequoias every day in every park by the millions, there are tens of millions of seeds. And so nature creates this phenomena of abundance. But there are not tens of millions of microcultures being developed. And it is so easy for paranoid government agencies, etc., to snuff out what can be luminary possibilities. Microcultures, 100 to 175 people strong, living in the quest of the most important question any group of people can ask themselves: how do we create the most sustainable human well-being? We need to give birth to those cultures, and so this is an area for 10x design. So much is born through that. So we have interspecies or interplanetary travel and migration, which ties in with microculture. Because I would submit that the most intelligent way to populate the next space entity, be it Mars, the Moon, a pod floating in Earth's orbit, is the group of people using scientific metrics that have created the most peaceful, win-win, happy, and efficiently sustainable culture on the planet. And that culture will begin with groups of 100 to 175 people. And one of the things anthropologists find is that the human brain cannot keep an intimate relationship with more than that size. In other words, that once you get to 100 and 175 people, you start a new, quote, family, a new community, very much like the tribes in the Amazon. They're not usually bigger than 150 people. They live in different groups, and they stay intimate with each other. And it's a very healthy, it's a very healthy size for real deep human intimacy. So these are the arenas that touch me as being the most significant. They are not, of course, the arenas that our public officials and many of our philanthropists and stuff are most focused on. That's the influence of culture. So one of the doorways into these things is by solving the problems that our inefficient cultures have produced. The illusion that there is garbage. There's no garbage. There's just poorly designed products that we don't know what to do with the stuff that we created. And so rather than say we don't know what to do with it, let's find something to do with it, we say, I don't know, we'll just throw it away and leave the design incomplete. But those resources that have been trapped in products and projects are good for something. We just lack the imagination to know what they're good for and the technology to release the energy we've trapped in what we're calling, as a human invention, the illusion of garbage. Nature doesn't produce garbage. It produces energy in formation. And it's always in flux. It's always changing. We produce the illusion of garbage whenever we create something we don't know what to do with. So solving these problems is often a way to get recognition, credibility in a cult that cannot see outside the limits of its paradigms. So this is also an area to develop 10x thinking and to start building income and resources, which in a capitalist framework, money is more important than people. So to gain weight, to create the space necessary to transcend the cult of culture, it requires having a certain amount of resources in an environment that you don't exist except for the size of your bank account. So these are pivotal kind of transitional creative workarounds, how to be intelligent in a cultural environment that lacks the intelligence to intelligently evaluate your intelligence. It's very difficult. So it requires these adaptive workarounds. That's also an arena for 10x thinking. How do you take a stuck myopic culture in any country and transition its core citizens into a more open and data-based culture in a peaceful, transcendent way? We don't have that technology. What happens currently is little seeds pop up, revolution, and it gets squashed by less intelligent but more massive power structures. And that's the end of that. We need that technology. So this is actually a very, very pivotal area of 10x thinking as well. Transitional culture, the technology of change, the technology of partnering with the reptilian brain so that it feels more afraid of the status quo based on data than it does of the beautiful unknown based on fear.